My name is Grace Johnson. I'm a 41-year-old housewife. Currently, I live with my husband Hudson and our daughter Aria, just the three of us. Hudson, who is a year older than me, was a senior in high school. I had a thing for older guys. And Hudson was quite the standout at school, always at the center of attention. He was tall, with a model-like face, and I remember he was probably the most popular guy in school. I fell for him at first sight as soon as I enrolled and pursued him relentlessly for 2 years until he graduated. At the graduation ceremony, I went to get a button from his jacket. Well, not just the second button, but almost all of them were gone. After Hudson graduated, it felt like there was a huge void in my heart. I couldn't bring myself to date any other guys. You know, like having a major crush on someone and then they're gone. After he left, I just drifted through my high school days without much purpose. But a turning point came when I started college. At a drinking party I was invited to by a friend. Hudson happened to be there by chance. You're Hudson, right? I'm Grace, your junior from high school. Do you remember me? When I approached him, he looked at me intently. With so many girls chasing after him in school, I didn't expect him to remember me, just one among many. But Hudson said, Grace, right? The band girl? I've seen you practicing late in the classroom. Just knowing he remembered me made me incredibly happy. After that, I bumped into him several times at college parties. Though we attended different universities, we had mutual friends, so Hudson was often there. He was still very popular, but I made every effort to stay close to him and finally got to go on a date with him when he landed a job. I finally got to go on a date with him alone when he landed a job. I invited him out to celebrate under the pretext of a job celebration, but he initially turned me down lightly. I'm only interested in fancy places. So, I booked a high-end restaurant and invited him again. Hudson's eyes widened when he heard the name of the restaurant. Well, I guess that was to be expected. It was not the kind of place a regular student could afford. Thanks to that, Hudson was in a good mood and accepted the dinner date. He seemed quite pleased with the luxurious meal in a private room at the high-end restaurant. I had researched in advance what he wanted and presented him with an expensive watch during the meal. When I gave him the watch, I confessed, "Hudson, I've liked you since high school. Would you go out with me?" Hudson was silent for a moment after my confession. Just when I thought it was over, he smiled broadly. "Sure. But I'm a bit high maintenance, so be prepared," he said, holding my hand. I was so happy I could have fainted. I liked his somewhat arrogant demeanor. Being a student, my perspective was generally youthful and naive. And I genuinely believed it was no problem at all that he was high maintenance. "Whatever you wish for, I'll make it happen," I told him, and I officially became his girlfriend. Hudson doesn't know, but the high-end restaurant we went to that day was actually owned by my grandmother. I'm truly grateful to my grandmother for arranging a private room where I could successfully confess my feelings. This is how my relationship with Hudson began. He had warned me about his self-centeredness even before we started dating, and sure enough, he lived up to expectations. He always puts his feelings first. But what surprised me more was how much kinder Hudson was than I had anticipated. He always carries heavy things for me and even opens the car door for me when we're driving. In restaurants, he pulls out the chair for me, and he does all this smoothly. I can't even count how much I've spent on Hudson during our 2 years of dating. I've given him almost everything he's ever wanted as a gift. And when Hudson said he wanted kids, I took it as his way of proposing. I had decided I would give Hudson whatever he wanted, and I was thrilled that he was thinking about marriage, so I immediately started preparing for marriage and pregnancy. That's how we were blessed with our first daughter, Aria, and our marriage became a reality. The joy of marrying Hudson, the man I had always admired, has not faded even now. Even if I come to resent him at times, I think it's still a beautiful memory. The first time I discovered Hudson's affair was when Aria was in elementary school. Learning that the other woman was the instructor at Aria's swimming class left me speechless. Apparently, Hudson had been given her contact information in secret when he took Arya to her class. I was disgusted by the instructor's actions, but I knew Hudson was that type of person from the moment I fell for him at first sight. Hudson's looks have the charm to captivate anyone instantly. Later, I found out that there were 2 or 3 other women he was seeing at the time. Like with the swimming instructor, it seems he was often suddenly given contact information or approached. Hudson can't resist beautiful women, so he probably took the bait as soon as he was approached. I found out about the swimming instructor when I saw the 2 of them in the car together. The very car I had given to Hudson for his most recent birthday. Naturally, I cried and confronted Hudson. I was filled with intense anger over Hudson's involvement with another woman and the fear that he might leave this home. Hudson admitted to the affair and begged for my forgiveness. "I'm really sorry. I want to protect the life I have with you and Arya. It was just a moment of madness. Please forgive me. The only person I love is you, Grace." How could I not forgive him after he said that? Yes, even after years of marriage, I'm still head over heels for my husband. Because I married the man I admired, I always end up forgiving him. If Hudson wants me to cheer up, I'll do it. Then he becomes kind again. I'm fully aware that I'm a hopelessly naive and foolish wife. But if it keeps our family together, then that's okay. Mom, did you forgive Dad again? That's why he keeps doing whatever he wants. You can't give in to his whims anymore, okay? That's how I got scolded by my daughter. Then, when Arya turned 13, another of Hudson's affairs came to light. This time, it was with a receptionist at his workplace. Apparently, the fiancé, who worked in the same company as a receptionist, caught Hudson at her place. That led to a significant confrontation. The affair reached Hudson's boss through her, and although Hudson had to pay compensation, his boss kept it under wraps, so the affair didn't spread throughout the company. But Hudson became dissatisfied with the penalty and stopped going to work. You know, I've been thinking about switching to a company with better conditions. It's good timing, and it's better for me and you, right, Grace? There was no apology for the incident with the receptionist, and his reasoning was completely illogical to me. But in the end, I forgave Hudson again. Arya was furious with me. She had just started middle school and was feeling distrustful of her father. In fact, it was Arya who told me about Hudson's dates with the receptionist. I saw them on my way back from tutoring. I'm glad I wasn't with any friends. Because of my leniency with Hudson, Arya ended up becoming quite responsible. She's been working hard in school and even has plans to study abroad at a university overseas after graduating high school. Thinking that it wouldn't do for her husband to remain unemployed forever, I introduced Hudson to the company he had talked about, which offered better conditions. It seems the terms were to his satisfaction because Hudson switched jobs immediately. 4 years have passed since then. Surprisingly, my husband has been working seriously. He took a job in sales, which seems to suit him well. However, the company he joined deals with pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, and since it offers many products for women, he became a salesperson in the cosmetics department. I was really worried about that. But even with more opportunities to interact with women, Hudson has been coming straight home for his family. As Arya started preparing for her overseas studies in her senior year of high school, our family finally seemed to settle down. It was soon after that Hudson had to go on a solo assignment. I really wanted to go with him, but he said, "Arya's high school life is important too, so I'm counting on you, Grace, while I'm away." I just can't say no to Hudson's requests. So, as Hudson said, I decided to stay by Arya's side and keep the home running. Though things between Hudson and Arya seem to be going well for now, Arya still seems to harbor a bit of resentment towards him. It's kinda weird how Dad suddenly became so tame. Well, I can understand how she feels. But these past few years, I haven't sensed any signs of other women from Hudson. Instead, he's been coming home every day and even goes out with the family on his days off. Arya might call me soft, but I want to believe in Hudson. That doesn't mean Hudson's whims have disappeared. He refused the apartment prepared by his company for his solo assignment. He didn't like the old and lived-in properties. The company said it's fine to live wherever if he pays the rent himself, so Hudson chose a place he liked. The only fun I'll have on my assignment is watching TV, right? Oh, and make sure to get a brand new hairdryer too. I can't even count how much I've spent on Hudson. I was planning to use Hudson's earnings for Aria's study abroad funds, but it looks like I'll end up using my own money to set up Hudson's living arrangements and pay his rent for the assignment. Mom, you're too soft on Dad. If he just lived in the apartment the company provided, none of this would have happened. I got scolded by my daughter and felt a bit remorseful. So, Aria went with Hudson for his move. She said if I went, I'd just give in to Hudson's demands and end up buying unnecessary things. This is the first time living apart from Hudson, and I cried when seeing him off. Aria seemed a bit exasperated, but Hudson was kind. I'll come back on my days off, so have some delicious food ready for me, he said, patting my back. 2 days after Hudson's move and Aria's return, she told me. Everything went smoothly, so don't worry. I'm glad I left it to Aria. If it were me, I might not have been able to leave Hudson because I'd miss him too much. It's been 3 weeks since Hudson went on his assignment. He said he'd be too busy to come home right away. Tomorrow is a day off, and Hudson is coming home tonight for the first time in a while. I started preparing a feast just like Hudson wanted. Aren't you going overboard with this every time? Aria would say, but I don't mind going the extra mile for Hudson. By 7 p.m., I had a feast laid out on the table, waiting for Hudson's return. But Hudson never came. When I couldn't reach him by phone, I worried that something might have happened to him. Eventually, I told Aria to eat without me, and I waited until morning, but I only managed to get in touch with him the next day at noon. Sorry, there was a problem at work, and I couldn't make it back. I couldn't even contact you, and I'm really sorry for worrying you. I'm just relieved that you are safe. It seemed like Aria sensed something but didn't say anything to me. On the other end of the phone, Hudson said, I'll make it up to you next time. Hey, remember the restaurant we went to when we first started dating? Let's go there and talk about everything. I was truly happy that Hudson remembered that moment. I booked the day we confessed our feelings and told Hudson about it. Can you make the reservation under my name? I want to go in style since we're making the effort. Hudson requested, so I changed the reservation right away. I'll definitely come home this weekend. I want to see Aria too. My spirits lifted again. I started preparing immediately. Mom, you're expecting too much from Dad. I don't want to see you get hurt by him, Aria said coldly. It seemed like she had a feeling that Hudson might not come home this weekend either. That weekend, the feast laid out was not eaten by my husband. Aria comforted me gently as I cried on the sofa. After that, Hudson never returned home from his solo assignment. During this time, Aria, who was worried, made a suggestion. Mom, if you want to see Dad, why don't we go to him? Why didn't I think of that? I could have gone to see him any weekend. I nodded and began to prepare immediately. But Aria, with a serious face, said, Mom, there's one condition. I'm going with you. And no matter what, stay calm. Aria's face was so serious that I decided to listen to her wish. Hudson's place was quite far, taking several hours by train. We finally arrived at the apartment where Hudson lives. The room was a bit luxurious, and since I arranged it, I had the keys. Hudson would surely be surprised. Entering the room, the entrance was clean, and the shoes were neatly arranged. The living room was tidy too, not what you'd expect from a bachelor's living space. But something felt off. There were 2 sets of wallets, dishes, toothbrushes, almost as if someone was living there. My heart raced, and as I encountered various pieces of evidence, I couldn't deny that Hudson was living here with someone else. Then, I saw an envelope under the table and my heart pounded. A green envelope. It was a filled-out divorce form, complete with Hudson's signature and seal. I was speechless. My husband intended to divorce. Then, my daughter spoke from behind me. "Let's go home, Mom. It's useless to stay here." I hadn't even met Hudson yet, but what was there to talk about? With the filled-out divorce form, Hudson's intentions were clear. Tears naturally overflowed. I barely remember how we got home. Arya supported me as we took the train and a taxi from the station. By the time I realized, it was late at night, and I was sitting on the sofa. A blanket, likely placed by Arya, was on my shoulders, and there was a warm drink on the table. Arya was sitting next to me, fiddling with some device. "This is a webcam I installed when Dad moved. I told Dad it was so we could talk anytime, and he happily allowed it. Though he's probably forgotten by now. She likely took it with her when she left the room. Mom, I told you before we went, but please brace yourself. What I'm about to do might be hard for you, but I'm worried about you," Arya said, then played the footage from the camera connected to her smartphone. "It's okay, my wife will forgive me no matter what I do. Her family seems really wealthy, you know? They've always given me whatever I wanted whenever I asked for it." The screen showed Hudson and another woman talking. The woman he was talking to was young and beautiful. "I've managed to turn quite a bit of what I mooched off her into good money. So, I'm not really interested in her family's wealth. It's too much hassle to ask about it. My daughter's about to graduate from high school, so I'm thinking it's about time to get a divorce and free myself." I was in shock at Hudson's unbelievable words. Every time, Arya had to remind me to stay strong by saying, "Mom, hold on." After saying, "I'm sorry, Mom," Arya carried me to the bedroom. I couldn't tell if I had slept or not until morning came. When I went to the living room, Arya was already there. Seeing me, she rushed over with a worried look. She seemed to want to say something, but when I showed her a smile, her expression changed to one of relief. "Arya, I'm sorry for worrying you. I'll submit that divorce form as he wishes." Arya nodded, and we hugged each other tightly. The old me might have been consumed by jealousy and cried my eyes out. But now, strangely, I felt nothing towards Hudson. The day after we visited Hudson's house, Arya and I quickly went to the city hall and submitted the divorce form. Since then, we've been busy with Arya's high school graduation and preparations for her study abroad. There's been no contact from Hudson. He must be enjoying his life with his mistress, thinking we won't reach out. I thought he might come back on his own for Arya's graduation, but left him be when she said, "He's a stranger now." Today is the day Arya leaves for her study abroad. I was talking to a friend who came to see us off at the airport. During that time, I was checking my smartphone to see if there was anything I had left undone. I've cancelled the old mobile phone, and the sale of the house is complete. Hudson's things have been sent to him, so that's settled. Oh, and I need to cancel the lease on that apartment by the end of next month. As I was muttering to myself, Arya, having said goodbye to her friend, came over. "Mom, it's almost time." I nodded and followed her, pulling my carry-on. Today, Arya is setting off for her study abroad. And I've decided to move abroad as well. There's no need for me to wait for Hudson at home anymore. Arya and I are starting a new life together. I've cancelled the old mobile phone and sold the house we lived in. Arya and I will disappear from Hudson's life without leaving anything behind. That was his last wish. Today was supposed to be the reservation at that restaurant. He hasn't contacted me. Probably, he wanted the reservation under his name to impress some woman. I'll ask Grandma about how he's doing tomorrow. It adds to the excitement of starting a new life. It's been a week since Arya and I moved abroad. We've finished moving in the packages, and our life is starting to settle. The day after we arrived, I called Grandma according to her time zone. She knew about my divorce from Hudson. And she told me about the restaurant. That day, he brought a woman to Grandma's restaurant. Just like 18 years ago, booking a private room in the high-end restaurant. Of course, there's a charge for using a private room at this place. When it came time to pay, Hudson's eyes widened at the amount. When I went with him, there was a discount because of my face pass, but this time it had nothing to do with me. There was no discount, so he must have paid the regular price. However, Hudson would never do something embarrassing. I assumed he presented his card as if nothing was wrong. Though my grandma mentioned his hand was shaking a bit at that moment. I suspect Hudson must have called me afterwards. Probably asking for money. But my number has been cancelled. Hudson must have felt something was off, but he doesn't know my current contact information. Of course, Aria's number has been changed too. I wonder how he's doing. And now, a month has passed since we arrived overseas. Hudson must be in trouble by now. The apartment he's living in is under my name and is due to be cancelled at the end of this month. He should have received a prior notice, but I wonder if he's realized it. It'd be fine if his roommate is someone he can trust. While thinking about this, Aria spoke to me. A friend from back home contacted me. Someone was making a scene at the place where our house used to be. Aria thought it was Dad. Dad seems to be in quite a panic. Just imagining Hudson in a panic is funny. His handsome image is ruined. Mom, what do we do? Go back home for a while? I had thought we'd need to talk to Hudson eventually. But I don't want to meet him. We're not going back. But I will talk to Dad. Aria tilted her head, but I had a plan. This is really the end. Let's face him properly and say goodbye. Aria and I took a nap to adjust to the time difference, preparing for the face-to-face with Hudson. We're no longer a couple, but let's settle this once and for all. Hudson must be sufficiently damaged by now, but that's not enough for me. I've decided not to forgive Hudson. Aria and I sat on the sofa, staring at the webcam above the TV. Soon, my smartphone received a call. They were ready. When I turned on the TV, Hudson appeared on the screen. With a few adults watching the situation in the background. Wah. Grace? Aria too. Where are you guys? Hudson's voice was slightly delayed from his mouth movements. Hudson, long time no see. You look well. Where are we? That's something I can't tell you. Where are you? Hudson, looking confused, answered. Well, I was called by my boss to the president's office at the company this morning. He seemed uncomfortable under the watchful eyes. Hudson didn't seem to grasp the situation. I asked them to accompany you today because I have a lot to tell you. I said, and Hudson looked even more bewildered. First, the divorce form you filled out has been successfully submitted. You probably know since you received the acceptance notice. You were so kind to sign it yourself. No complaints, right? Hudson appeared confused by my words. He definitely had the intention to divorce. However, Hudson countered with something else. But, selling the house is foul play. That was my house too. You shouldn't have sold it without my permission. If you sold it, you should share the money with me. The conversation was veering off track, but since I was planning to discuss this eventually, I decided to explain it right away. You might be misunderstanding something, but that house wasn't ours. It was in my parents' names. So, if my parents decided to sell the house, we had to comply. Hudson looked as if he couldn't believe it. But it's true. Our house was quite a mansion. There was no way Hudson could afford such a house with his income. It was a house my parents had given me as a wedding gift. It happened nearly 20 years ago, so he must have forgotten. I sent you your belongings, didn't I? The watch I gave you, the suits, the accessories. I bought them because you wanted them, but you treated them like trash in your room. Maybe you've already turned them into cash. It probably hit the mark. Hudson clenched his teeth for a moment. It's embarrassing to admit, but why did I spoil this man so much? I loved him that much. The fact is true, but suddenly, I felt a surge of regret. I loved you so much that I was willing to fulfill any request. Even when you cheated, I forgave you, thinking you would eventually come back to me. But if you wanted a divorce, then it's over. I wiped the tears I had been holding back. Really, as Arya said, maybe I was too lenient on him, too forgiving. This divorce could well be said to be my own doing. Seeing me like this, Arya spoke up. Dad, Mom has been waiting for you all this time. No matter what I said, Mom believed in you. You betrayed her, Dad. I won't forgive you. Arya played the recorded voice of Hudson that she had captured. Where did you get this recording from? Hudson was clearly shaken. Arya also showed a picture of Hudson with another woman on the screen. Dad, unlike Mom, I've always doubted you. Sorry. I really wanted to prove your innocence and looked into things, but the more I dug, the more evidence of your affairs I found. You've been pretending not to cheat these past few years, but you've really been playing around quite a bit. Arya presented facts I didn't know. Apparently, Hudson had also committed adultery within his company. Arya had contacted my parents in advance and investigated Hudson's infidelity. No wonder you were coming home properly. Adultery during work hours is ridiculous. After Arya's remark, Hudson showed a slightly sad face. I don't know who you're living with now, but it can be found out. Since Mom can't say it, I will. Dad, we're going to sue you for compensation. Hearing about compensation, Hudson stood up from his chair. He started getting angry, his face turning red. What compensation? There's no way I have that kind of money. Yeah, even the restaurant the other day charged me a crazy amount. I couldn't help but smirk when he brought up the restaurant. Arya immediately retorted. That restaurant was a place of memories for you and Mom. I can't believe you'd take another woman there. It's terrible how you deceived Mom. Do you know how much she was looking forward to it? Dad, you're the worst of all. The lack of money is your own fault. We'll make sure you pay. The staring contest between Hudson and Arya through the screen continued. That's when I took over from Arya. So, Hudson, you'll be hearing from a lawyer. We're prepared for this to go to court. And, as you probably know, the house you're living in now will also be cancelled soon. Make sure you prepare to move. Hudson stood, staring at the screen. Having been adored by everyone around him until now, his anger at being belittled like this was immeasurable. But he could use a taste of defeat. Come on, not forgiving the cheating now, that's dirty. Sneaking around collecting evidence of someone's cheating is creepy and underhanded. And suing for compensation, canceling the current house, how monstrous can you get? You have the worst personality. I wish I could see your parents' faces. Hudson yelled so loud it seemed the speaker might break. You want to see my parents' faces? Well, let's make that final wish come true. My parents have been behind you this whole time. Hudson froze at my words. He looked back at me with a puzzled expression. And then, he slowly turned around. There stood the president and executive director of Hudson's company. The president is my father, and the executive director is my mother. Because you said you didn't want a wedding or a meet and greet because it was too much trouble, you've never seen my parents' faces. Despite your selfishness, my parents respected the man I chose, and have always watched over us generously. Any complaints? Hudson was shaking a bit. He was probably reflecting on his behavior here. When you said you wanted to change jobs, my parents helped you. That's why you're working at this company. Then, my father, who had been silent until now, spoke up as the president, not just as Grace's father. From here on, I have something to say not as Grace's father but as the president. Hudson, it's come to my attention that not only have you been committing adultery during work hours, but you also have had romantic relationships with women from our business contacts. And it's not just one or two women. We've received numerous complaints. Hudson's face went pale. My mother, the executive director, spoke to Arya and me through the screen. From here, it will be about company matters, so you two should rest. If anything happens, we'll contact you. Thank you. Arya and I thanked my mother. And finally, I also had words for Hudson. Hudson, leave Arya to me. By then, goodbye. Then Hudson approached the screen, crying and shouting. I'm sorry. It was my fault. The most important thing to me is you two. Forgive me. Let's live together again. The video cut off midway. Probably, my mother ended the call. This ordeal has caused a lot of worry for my parents. I plan to send them a thank you message later. Arya and I hugged each other, both crying. It's over. This is truly goodbye to Hudson. A few days later, Arya's life at school overseas begins today. After the entrance ceremony, Arya and I had a meal together. And we talked a little about Hudson. In addition to betraying me, Hudson had issues with his work attitude at the company and seemed to have angered my parents considerably. Moreover, it was revealed that he had been having affairs with various people related to his work, naturally leading to his inability to stay at my parents' company. Apparently, his way of doing business also caused some losses, and the company is considering suing him for damages. The woman Hudson had been living with, who knew he was married and was a co-worker from the same company, has agreed to the compensation claim and paid in full. Whether their relationship continues is unknown. Having lost everything, Hudson reportedly started a night job through an acquaintance. The compensation from Hudson is being deposited in small amounts each month. Mom, from now on, I'll protect you. Oh, that's reassuring. But I became stronger too. It's still my turn to protect you. We laughed together, saying that no matter what happens, I don't want to ruin this happy relationship with my daughter. With that thought, I watch my daughter forge ahead towards her dreams. Life overseas has its uncertainties, but as a mother, I'll live strong and enjoy the time with my daughter.